Hello, Professor. My name is Alex Porter, and today I'm going to be doing the Chapter 10 case study review assignment that you have assigned us. So for starters, the first question is, what are three concepts from Chapter 10 which you will keep top of the mind as a job seeker, a soon-to-be emerging leader, and a future HR professional within an organization? The three I chose to talk about are friendship groups, task groups, and interest groups. To define each, a friendship group is employees that like each other's company and socialize both inside and outside of work. Task groups is defined as a unit specially organized for a task. And interest groups are defined as a group of people that seek to influence public policy on the basis of particular common interests or concern. To dive deeper into some of these and kind of give an example of each, for friendship groups, I kind of talked about how being able to work with your friends, and that doesn't necessarily just mean in the workplace, that's working with your friends outside of work, finding additional time to work. And oftentimes if you're working with friends, there's already a connection. There's not a barrier you have to get over. It's just, oh, we're friends. It's going to be easy to work with. That's very similar to how our group was for our presentation with all of us being on the football team. And then task groups, as far as just specializing in a certain task, is silly as it sounds. I compared it to Among Us. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a game where you're online, multiple people, and you're all given tasks, and you all have to complete these tasks in a certain amount of time, basically. I view that almost as just like work inside the workplace. Like, these aren't your friends, these are your coworkers. Not that you don't get along with them, but you all know that there's a common goal. You all know what needs to be done, and you're working towards that. And then finally, the interest groups. I feel like these people, obviously not friends, and while competing for or trying to complete a certain goal, they're also doing it for themselves. They want money, they want incentives, raises, whatever that might be. They're working towards that. They're working at a more individual level. While in a certain group, they all have different interests and are invested in certain things, which at times isn't necessarily great for a team, but it also can be depending on how you look at it. And so these are just three things that kind of stood out to me from Chapter 10, some things that I've learned about since taking this course. Just acknowledging the different ways, the different kind of groups you can work with is important, and knowing that there's different dynamics, so you're never necessarily completely thrown off. Now, the second question, what values stood out to you related to people and HR after completing the case studies in small groups? Or in other words, what themes or values stood out to me? The number one value that stood out to me was change, whether that was in the actual case study itself when we were talking about Zappos and the change that they were going through and how we would adapt, and even just in our small groups, change within those groups. Some groups, they didn't have every day for the presentation. Other groups, including mine, they were given an additional person shortly before the presentation. It's all about change. I think that applies a lot in business. There's things you can't predict. And change is inevitable, and I talked about this in our project today too, about advancement, when critics were saying there's no room for advancement, but everything in the world is always advancing. There's always going to be advancements, and that's never going to change. And I'm talking about change right now. That's like something, and I bring up the email and mail. Like, if you're mailing all your employees and all your customers information, they're not going to get it for a while. Emailing is significantly faster. It's a much easier, better, more efficient way to work. Stuff like that. Just being able to adapt to change, that really stood out to me as I watched all the groups, including ours, go today. And the final question, what impact did in-class, out-of-class activities have on your professional development? I think just learning some of those tricks, like emphasizing, like even the first day when you were like, meet three people, and then now when you're talking about them, say, to my right is, for example, Graham Wright, and then talking about him, being specific, using his first full, Graham White, sorry, I said Graham Wright, but using the first name, last name, describing where they are, and then going into detail. I view that is extremely important. And as far as the belonging among my peers, for my group, it was super easy. Originally, it was us four, and we all play football, so we got in a group, and it was like, okay, I'm working with some of my three best friends, and no problem there. Like, we're cruising. And then I know this comes back to the change. We get a group added, and that just helps you. You just overcome things, you adapt. And I say overcome, but we didn't really have to overcome anything. Saki was a great addition. She was nothing but great to us. And it just made me realize, you might not know a person, but that doesn't mean they're not going to add value. And I knew obviously having the additional person will add value, but you never want any negative connotation. You never want to go in a bad mindset. You just want to be open to everything. And it's another thing I've learned. And just following up with that, in the future, I'm just going to try to communicate everything I can. I'm just going to try to be a great leader or teammate, whatever my role might be for that. I've always been somebody who's kind of a leader, but taking a step back, being able to be a teammate and just not letting them down. And I'm never going to be the guy to let my team down, whoever's on my team, whether it's in school, in sports, whatever. But just being somebody they can count on, that's something that I'm going to rely on and I'm going to do for the remainder of the semester. And I'm excited to meet a bunch of new people, be in different scenarios, and just keep working hard. Thank you.